start the program in Nigeria, where in just over a week, millions of Nigerians will troop to polling centers to elect a new president for the country. Officially, 73 candidates are running for office, but the election is effectively a two-horse race between incumbent Muhammadu Buhari of the ruling All Progressives Congress and his main challenger, Atiku Abukakar of the opposition People's Democratic Party. Both men are from the north of the country, so the issue of region, which is often a strong factor in Nigeria's politics, is not expected to play a major role this time, but there are other factors that could swing the vote either way for the candidates. Here's CGTN's Deji Badmus with more.
With the two major political parties in the country allotting their presidential tickets to the north, something called zoning in Nigeria, it essentially means the next president of the country would come from the north, unless, of course, any of the other presidential candidates from other parts of the country is able to cause an offset, something that is very unlikely. So by all chance, Nigeria's next president will be either of these two men, Muhammadu Buhari, the incumbent, who is seeking a second and final term in office, and Atiku Abukakar, a former vice president of the country, who is seeking to fulfill a lifetime political ambition to govern Africa's most populous country. But men have been stamping for votes across the country, attracting huge crowds at their rallies.
Do you want to continue the poverty rate we have in this country? So, will you vote for APC? No way. Do you want to continue the unemployment rate we have in this country? Are you going to vote for APC? Never, never, never.
All we are trying to do is to remind you to think, where were we in 2015 when we came in? Where are we now? What have we been able to achieve with the resources available to us? They said they spent $16 billion, not naira, on power. Where is the power? I am warning you, don't make any mistake of choosing any PDP candidate. What they will try to do is to cover the theft they have committed against the nation.
While both candidates are from the north, they have picked their running mates from two different parts of the south of the country. And that's mainly for the strategic reason of appealing to voters in those regions, which is a crucial factor in elections in Nigeria. Buhari's running mate and current vice president is from the southwest, while Abubakar's running mate is a former governor from the southeast.
A lot of people will expect of the opinion that if Elijah Atiku Abukakar had taken his running mate from the southwest, it's a strong candidate from the southwest, he would have been able to divide the vote, you know, the southwest being a strong base of the ruling party. And then also, if you look at the voting population on both sides, southwest and the southeast, the voting population in the southwest is more than that of the southeast.
With Boko Haram on a seeming resurgence in Nigeria's northeast, carrying out attacks on military bases, security is becoming a big talking point on the campaign trail. So too is the economy, which is still fragile but recovering slowly. While these issues will show weigh on the decision of some voters and determine how they vote on election day, for many, it will boil down to their perception of the two candidates.
There are factors that I consider very important. There may be other minor factors, but the most critical is the people themselves, the electorate. They will determine the outcome. It will put troop out en masse and ensure that they vote and allow their vote to count. It may lead to a positive development on the side of the people, because that will manifest the mandate of the people in choosing leadership. And so that is a very critical factor. The second factor in Nigeria, which I know, is umpire, the INEC. The INEC has a role to play in the outcome of the election. If they conduct free, fair, and credible election, of course, it is a positive development for electoral process.
The political atmosphere in the country is really charged up. The coming election is very crucial, both for the APC, which is seeking to consolidate its hold on power, and the PDP, which is seeking to stage a comeback after its defeat in 2015. In a matter of days rather than weeks, we shall find out who the people of this country have decided to pitch their tent with. Deji Badmo, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
Now, former U.S. President Bill Clinton has been invited to Nigeria ahead of the elections. The visit is set for the 12th and 13th of February and is part of an initiative by a local organization that is pushing for free and fair polls. The National Peace Committee has organized what it terms as the National Peace Accord, where the former President of the United States is expected to deliver a keynote address. The Secretary General of the Commonwealth, Patricia Scotland, is also expected to attend. The event is aimed at getting candidates to commit to a peaceful and smooth transition of power in Nigeria. Well, for more on Nigeria's elections, we're now joined by our correspondents. In Abuja, we have Phil Ihaza and, of course, Deji Badmus live with us in Lagos. Deji, I want to start with you. Let's talk about this peace accord. It definitely sounds like a very noble gesture, but indeed securing peaceful elections is often easier said than done. Just talk us through the details of this peace accord and whether or not it's likely that all political parties will indeed sign.
Well, Beatrice, this is not the first time that the peace accord actually will be signed. We had one in 2015, just before the election then. And as a matter of fact, there was another accord signed just in December this year, actually. All the candidates signed up they signed up to the accord, and of course that accord was by the National Peace Committee. So this is just like the final peace accord before the election proper. Now, the one that signed in in December of 2018, almost all the candidates signed. President Buhari signed, former Vice President Atiku Abukakar also signed. So this is the final peace accord, and basically the idea is to commit the candidates now to ensure that the elections are free and fair. So they are committing to free and fair election, that their campaigns will be clean, that they would not in any way incite, by their speech now, incite violence or cause people to resort to violence, that they would avoid any form of hate speech, any use of religious and ethnic incitement at all, that all of that would not be part of their campaign, and that they they're committing now to the final results announced by the Independent National Electoral Commission. That is if, of course, the elections are judged to be free and fair. Of course, you know, the accord does not abridge the right of anyone at all who feels aggrieved to head to court. And let me just make something clear, Lindy. This accord is not a binding accord. This is just like a gentleman's agreement that the candidates are all committing to. It's an initiative that came up in 2015, and the body that is responsible, headed by a former military leader of this country, is continuing with that process, and it's something that all the candidates have actually applauded and they're all committing to. Lindy?
Well, let's look at that a little closer. As you say, it's a gentleman's accord. And I want to come to you, Phil, on this issue. Just how much faith is this peace effort inspiring in voters across Nigeria? Let's look particularly at youth. Some say they're vulnerable to being encouraged to engage in conflict or violence during election times. Is there a sense that the young people themselves are going to work towards mitigating any conflict and violence during this election?
Well, thank you, Lindy. Like you said, it's easy for the youths to be vulnerable, you know, to attacks, or rather to incite violence during elections and even after elections. But I'd like to take it from 2015, for example, where, like Deji put it, a gentleman agreement. Imagine what would have happened. A lot of critics and analysts have said that if the leaders, in this point now, the former president Goodluck Jonathan didn't go through with the peace accord by conceding to the announcement, the defeat by the electoral body, imagine what would have happened, you know. I'm talking about the reaction now from various youths and you know, youth bodies all over the country. So in answering that question, I'd like to say, first of all, that the leaders, the political leaders, would have to, you know, take the lead by following all the guidelines, all the instructions, all the agreement to maintain peace, whatever the situation is. That way it is easier for the youths in different parts of the country to also follow suit, because they are supporters, they are also involved in the process, but they are also looking to ensure that, you know, the guidelines are also followed by their leaders. And secondly also is the fact that the information has to be properly disseminated. There has to be proper awareness, there has to be engagement with the youth this time, not so that the agreement is not isolated by just the figureheads of the parties now, the main opposition and the ruling party. I'm talking about engaging the youth as well, because the leaders might not, you know, incite violence directly, but their body language can also encourage the youth to be a part of it.
And just talk a little bit more about that, Phil. I want to stay with you. We know, of course, that there's 73 candidates vying for president, but ultimately this is a two-horse race. When it comes to youth participation, however, are there any young people that are going to, in some way or another, make a mark during this election on the country's political landscape?
Well, definitely I would say yes. The youths are going to be making a huge impact, making a mark in the forthcoming elections, because for the first time in Nigeria's history, we're seeing, you know, the bill, the Not Too Young to Run bill signed by the current administration, the President Buhari administration. But that came after several months of, you know, campaigns, protests, movement by, you know, collaboration or a coalition of youths all across the country, so that we can see more inclusiveness of youths even down to the age of 25. And that also encouraged, even if, I mean, it was just a few months to the election, we also saw a lot of youths putting out interest to be a part of the system now, not just voters, because we have over 51% of the entire 85 million registered voters, eligible voters, as youths. So they are also going to be deciding the country's future. I'm talking about electing the leaders. We also see a lot of them running for key positions, maybe not from, I mean, the presidency, but we, because we actually see that out of 72 candidates, the main, you know, candidates are the APC and the ruling, the PDP, but we also have many of them encouraged to participate. They might not surface in this election, but they have been involved, and we're seeing that there's a trend that is about to change in the near future. So yes, they definitely will make a huge impact in the elections coming forward.
It's a very encouraging trend indeed. Deji, I want to come back to you just very quickly. We have heard some worrying reports of a fire incident at the Electoral Commission's office. Can you tell us a little more about this?
Well, Lindy, the latest incident actually happened in Anambra State. Anambra State is in the southeast of Nigeria. It happened in the state capital, Awka, and the building affected is owned by INEC, as we understand. It's a building that actually houses materials that are to be used for Saturday's election. And what is actually worrying and what is coming true from that incident is that most of the items or materials affected are card readers. Card readers, very crucial for this election. They're supposed to be used, you know, for the accreditation of voters. And now, if those card readers are badly burnt, then it means it's something serious. So we just have to wait and see if INEC is able to replace them as quickly as possible before the elections. But what we understand is that some very sensitive materials like card readers were burnt, PVCs were burnt, and of course, Lindy, as you're aware, it's not the very first incident we've had recently. We had two not quite long ago, one in the north of the country, another in the south-south. In the southeast also, a state called Abia State. But in those two states where we had the previous fire incident, what we were told were affected were PVCs, that's voter cards that had not been collected. But in this case, we're having a situation where card readers are reportedly destroyed. Then that is quite worrying. We just have to wait and see how INEC responds to this. We've not gotten any information at all from INEC, but the state resident electoral commissioner in that state has actually spoken. He said they're actually still doing a damage assessment. At the end of the day, they'll be able to tell how much materials were affected, and then we have to wait to hear from INEC how quickly those materials can be replaced before the election on Saturday. Lindy? Indeed,
because of course, as you said, Deji, not the first incident of this nature, but we certainly hope that so close to the elections that this is indeed the last. Thanks so much to Deji Badmus and of course Phil Ihaza, both joining me there from Nigeria.